The following program paid for by Lifespan Wealth Management. Providing financial advice since 1993. It's time for Your Money with Sherry Goss, Randy Goss, and Jonathan Eisner. And now from the Macon studios of News Talk 940 WMAC, it's Your Money.
Good morning, Middle Georgia, and thanks for tuning in to Your Money, produced by Lifespan Wealth Management. As financial advisors, the main thing we do is provide retirement planning advice and manage our clients' investment accounts. So if you're looking for an investment advisor, call our office at 478-922-8100 to set up your complimentary consultation.
Lifespan Wealth Management has offices in Macon and Warner Robins for your convenience and has been serving Middle Georgia for over 30 years. You can learn more about our services by visiting our website at retirerelax.com. And while you're on our site, go to the special reports section where you'll find several reports that are available to you for free. You can also sign up to receive our digital feeds, which are short videos providing great information relevant to retirement, investing, and matters that affect your money.
We also offer seminars to the community at no cost. So if you're in need of a guest speaker for your church or civic organization, give us a call and together we can decide what topics you would like us to present to your group. Again, our contact number is 478-922-8100.
Very good. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the weather has been beautiful for the pinkest party on earth. Today, the 29th of March, there are several events to include the Sea Lion Splash, the Dog Show, Mike Fuller, the Magician, and Jurassic Kingdom, and a lot more going on in Creighton Park. Get out and enjoy the great outdoors. Check out cherryblossom.com for a complete schedule of events.
Yep. We have yet to make it over there. Hopefully we will at some point. But market update. Retail sales increased 0.2% on the month, better than the downwardly revised decline of 1.2% the prior month, but below the Dow Jones estimate for a 0.6% rise. Generally speaking, this is good news, although consumers spent at a slower rate, but at a much stronger pace than projected. Markets are still volatile, in case you haven't noticed, due to continued uncertainty over the ever-shifting tariff policy. Hopefully today, next week's rollout of the tariff plan from the Trump administration will provide clarity and direction. If that happens and we stick to the plan, the market should be somewhat less volatile.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
we hope. Great local news. Macon-Bibb County announced the $1.9 million deal to purchase nearly 10 acres of land at 815 Riverside Drive for Mercer to relocate their medical school. The medical school was built in 1982 and currently sits on College Street. The project is expected to be the largest investment in the university's history. The new site, located right on the banks of the Ocmulgee River, is near the Burger King and Barks and Brews Dog Park on Riverside Drive. In 2011, former Mercer president Kirby Godsey's Renaissance on the River Development Group took on an option agreement with the UDA. Godsey began preparing the Renaissance on the River plan for 200 condominiums, a boutique hotel, retail, and 240,000 square feet of medical or office space. The $90 million project was to break ground in 2014 and be finished by the end of 2016.
Yeah, I'm excited about this new project for downtown. Back in 2016, Godsey had to understandably pull out of the deal after learning about that the soil was contaminated. Last year, Godsey transferred his option agreement to the university, which aligned with their search for a new medical school site. The advantage for downtown is that typically a medical school facility can attract lots of collateral development.
This will be fun to watch, and this side of Macon get revitalized is just fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. We have an update on the beneficial ownership reporting requirement we discussed several months ago.
This is hilarious.
Yes. Now the Treasury has scrapped the entire reporting rule for the U.S. small business owners. However, it does still apply to foreign owners, so I guess it's not totally scrapped. Lawmakers sought this information to help curb criminal activity and illicit finance conducted through shell companies. It came with financial penalties for noncompliance. The U.S. Treasury Department is scrapping a requirement for small businesses to report information about their owners to the federal government. The rule was set to take effect on March 21st following months of delay in court. It carried financial penalties, which were potentially thousands of dollars for noncompliance. And the rule is open to public comment, set to be finalized this next year.
You and I were talking about this
Yeah.
week. It's comical because the threats were pretty serious.
Yeah, like $500 a day.
Something serious where they're like, if you don't do this, you're going to be we're going to fine you to Hades and back. And all of a sudden it's like, you know what? We're just going to do away with this requirement.
It's gone. It's just
Forget the whole, we're going to fine you.
Stroke of a pen, done, out the door.
All right. So also in the headlines this week, the United Arab Emirates will invest $1.4 trillion in the U.S. economy over the next 10 years after a meeting between President Trump and the Emirati official earlier this week, according to multiple reports, following years of growing ties between the Emirates, Trump, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. An anonymous White House official told Reuters the investment deal will substantially increase the UAE's existing investments in the U.S.
So that's fascinating to me that he's getting people to come to the table. And I'm seeing a lot of clients that are very negative on Trump, but he is making some good things happen. So try to stick to what's positive.
I think Trump's playing the long game. I think we can all agree at this table that he's playing the long game.
Yep. Very good. Also in the headlines this week, South Korea's Hyundai Motor Group, controlled by billionaire Woo-sun Chung, unveiled Tuesday a $21 billion investment plan to boost manufacturing in the U.S.
Yep, that's
another
just
Trump victory.
another example. Yep. All right, here's the scam alert for the week. Be careful what you click on, even with your cell phone. This week, my mom received a pop-up message informing her that she could check her blood pressure directly from her iPhone. Yes, and I can almost hear your eyes rolling over the airwaves. Well, she fell for it and she clicked on the link, and the next thing she knew, her cell phone had been taken over. She could not even get to the settings icon on her phone. My brother took her to the carrier to see if they could do anything to recover the device, but it was a lost cause. She ended up having to purchase a brand new phone for hundreds of dollars.
But hold on, let's take a break. This is worth asking. Your mom is how old? 90?
89, 88, 89. Yeah.
So very vulnerable.
Yes, very
In the
vulnerable.
technology side of
She's
things.
smart.
But she's smart. She's not
Okay.
she's not silly with IT. She's usually very careful. But because of some medical things going on in the house,
Exactly.
she thought this would be nice to have.
She's vulnerable.
She's vulnerable. And so she thought, well, how bad can this be? She clicked on this one. She said it looked like a very straightforward email. It wasn't like something that came in from China. All the language was like properly typed and stuff. It looked legit, but
Pretty scary.
it was not. So there's a couple of lessons to be taken from this. Do not trust links from people you do not know. Second, don't trust links from people you do know who don't normally send you links. And, don't maintain critical information on your phone that's not encrypted or at least have strong password protections. And I would highly encourage you to use a password manager because stuff's going to come into your phone, to your
It's
your
never
desktop.
ending.
It's never ending. These people are professionals.
What's the one you use, Randy? It's free, right?
RoboForm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I really I've been using it for a decade or so. So, all right, moving on. We were on a call recently with an investment company that we follow, and their greatest concern is our national debt. And I know we've talked about it before, but here's an excerpt from the report. A national debt, if not excessive, will be to us a national blessing. And that was written by Alexander Hamilton in 1781, who later became the first United States Secretary of the Treasury. These words highlight the importance of practical fiscal responsibility for future generations and foreshadow the potential consequence if not observed. Looking back to our country's origin, the country has always borrowed money and incurred debt to finance spending. During the American Revolutionary War, the national debt increased to $75 million to fund the war effort. And as our country has grown over the last 250 years into the most prosperous nation in history, so has our national debt. As of mid-March 2025, the U.S. gross federal debt is approaching $37 trillion, with a projection from the Congressional Budget Office, or the CBO, to reach $59 trillion by 2035, and that just makes me sick. I was looking at the U.S. debt clock yesterday and put a stopwatch against the time it took for $1 million to be added to the debt clock. It was 20.7 seconds. That's just terrible.
Yeah, that's pretty scary, actually. So what is the national debt? The national debt is an accumulation of outstanding borrowed money and owed interest used to finance government spending through the issuance of treasury bonds, bills, notes. And as most people know, when the federal government's annual spending outpaces the revenue that it receives, primarily from taxes, it's known as a budget deficit. Likewise, When revenues exceed spending, it is known as a budget surplus. Over the last 24 years, the federal government has recorded a budget deficit every fiscal year, which has led to an expansion of the national debt. Since 2001, the last year in which the government actually recorded a surplus, the total debt for per U.S. citizen has increased from $36,000 and some change to $106,000 and some change in 2024. Pretty significant. This metric helps evaluate whether debt levels are increasing with a corresponding rise in economic activity. An increase in debt levels outpacing economic output may signal warnings about the ability to service debt obligations in the future. The United States net debt is expected to reach over $30 trillion in 2025, which is equivalent to almost 100% of our GDP. Some of the reasons the debt has expanded since the 1980s include a secular decline in interest rates, which encouraged higher levels of deficit spending, slower economic growth, significant fiscal expenditures during the Great Financial Crisis, which was around 2008, and then the COVID-19 pandemic and tax reductions.
Right. And the primary force driving our national debt higher is the federal budget, which has not registered a surplus since 2001. The federal government's primary sources of revenue are our income, payroll, and corporate taxes. On the other side of the ledger, the federal government spending can be divided into three parts: mandatory spending, discretionary spending, and interest on the outstanding debt. Mandatory spending accounted for about 61% of government spending in 2024, most of which went to programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Discretionary spending made up about 26% of government spending last year and includes programs like defense, education, training, and transportation, public health. Lastly, net interest expense on outstanding debt, which represents interest payments excluding interest income the government collects, and that accounted for about 13% of the total spending last year and surpassed spending on defense and Medicare. Interest expenses as a percentage of spending has more than doubled from a decade ago as long-term interest rates have moved higher, and this fact is not addressed now. If it's not addressed now, it will become a real problem that will force the reduction of programs in the future, whether we like it or not.
Yep. The revenue the federal government received over the last 10 years has remained relatively stable as a percentage of GDP, dropping from 18% in 2015 to 17% in 2024. On the expenditure side, government spending as a percentage of GDP has increased from 20% in 2020 to 23% in 2024. The result is a revenue increase of $610 billion over the last 10 years and a spending increase of $1.86 trillion with a T. Forecasted revenue and spending data indicate that the mismanagement of the fiscal budget will likely continue as the mandatory spending increases with an aging population and net interest expenses rise with elevated long-term interest rates.
Yeah, and looking forward, the Trump administration recently launched initiatives to eliminate, quote, fraud, waste, and abuse from federal spending. According to government sources, the savings could amount to as much as $1 trillion, but some external sources place the figure much lower.
You know, I said I was looking at the U.S. debt clock, and they now have a Doge clock on
Is it
there.
on the same website?
On the same website.
Really?
And it shows, as of right now, there's about $250 billion in savings and growing. But that, just so you know, that equates to $2,213 per taxpayer.
I need to check that out.
Yep.
Unwavering confidence in the strength of this country's institutions and the guarantee that property rights will be upheld have made the U.S. Treasury market the world's largest and most liquid for government securities. Outside investors feel safe investing in our country's debt, knowing that it is backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. And if future spending is not moderated or future economic growth doesn't accelerate, investors may eventually lose faith in the country's ability to pay them back.
The report included a chart showing receipts by source and outlays by function. Do any of these categories surprise either of you guys? On the income side, the things that surprises me is that the government makes $32 billion from estate and gift taxes. And I really thought people were offshoring all of that, honestly.
Yeah. Well, there were a few things that jumped out at me. You know, we have people screaming about Doge and their efforts to save the government money to keep us from going broke. But at the same time, they're worrying about the possible reduction in Social Security payments or the reduction in other benefits and services, which are both on the expense side of the equation. But you also have politicians wanting to stop taxing Social Security and tips and other income that right now seem just absolutely critical to the left side of the equation. If this were a scale And in a perfect world, you'd want it to balance, but politicians keep giving more benefits and reducing taxes to both be better liked at election time. But neither of these are going to help us remain solvent.
Yeah, I wouldn't say anything from the chart necessarily jumps out at me or surprises me. To me, it was this article and this chart were really informative about the history of the national debt and how we got where we are. And it provided a lot of good context for what we are experiencing now. But I think we've talked about this. One of the things that shocks me the most is kind of like you were saying, Randy, is people are dogging on Doge and saying, "Oh, well, they're only saving this." And I
But
don't
they're
ca-
doing something.
But they're doing something.
And
And this,
$250 billion is a good start.
it might be a drop in the bucket relative to the debt, but it's something.
It's only been 2 months, right?
Right. I know. So the work has only just begun, and I think it's a good thing ultimately.
Yeah, they're finding fraud everywhere. So, taxpayers spent billions covering the same Medicaid patient twice, and here we go with more spending that we shouldn't have done. So, we've talked about issues with Medicare coverage being paid for by the government for people who don't use it for care as they use the VA instead. Now, a report from the Wall Street Journal shows that health insurers got double paid by the Medicaid system for the coverage of hundreds of thousands of patients across the country, which cost you and me and all the other taxpayers billions of dollars in extra payments. The insurers, which are paid by state and federal governments to cover low-income Medicaid recipients, collected at least $4.3 billion with the B over 3 years for patients who were enrolled and paid for in other states. The patients were signed up for Medicaid in 2 states at once, in many cases following a move from one to the other. Most were getting all their health care services through one insurer in one state, even though Medicaid was paying insurers in both states to cover them. How do they not see this in their computer system? I do not understand.
It baffles me.
Anyways, private insurers oversee Medicaid benefits for more than 70% of about 72 million low-income and disabled people in the program. The companies get paid each month for each person they cover. They aren't supposed to get paid if a patient leaves for another state.
Yeah, Medicaid and Medicare together cost taxpayers more than $1.8 trillion a year. Last year, a Wall Street Journal investigation examined ways in which private insurers have increased costs in Medicare, the separate program for seniors and disabled people. Dr. Oz, President Trump's choice to lead the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, has pledged to rein in excessive payments to insurers. The biggest Medicaid insurer, which is Centene, received duplicative payments between 2019 and 2021, the 3 years analyzed by the journal. Elevance Health was the next biggest, followed by United Health Group, and the analysis showed. Those companies, the 3 largest Medicaid insurers, together received more than $200 billion in Medicaid premiums last year alone. Individual states design their own Medicaid programs following federal guidelines, setting rules for who will be eligible and what services will actually be covered. The U.S. government covers more than half of the cost. The states are responsible for monitoring whether people qualify for benefits, including conducting yearly eligibility checks for most people.
Yeah, government guidelines stipulate that if Medicaid recipients move to another state, they are supposed to cancel their coverage in their former state when signing up for a new one, which often gives them a different issuer. But recipients don't always cancel, leaving the state to play catch up. The Wall Street Journal's analysis turned up some cases in which individuals were signed up in 5 or and sometimes more states. That's just crazy.
Why can't their computer system alert them when someone changes their address?
Well, I don't believe for 1 second that the insurers don't know that they're receiving duplicate payments.
Right.
And I believe that they should be held accountable for the funds that they've received in error plus interest. Why should they receive a bonus off the ill-gotten gains when the country is going broke? Social Security is treading water, and other social services are being are just teetering.
Yep, I agree. So, hey, met with a lot of clients this week that don't think anything's getting fixed. They're uncovering a lot of stuff that is going to get fixed.
Yep.
And this one looks like a simple one.
Agreed. All right. So, how long do you need to actually keep tax documents? With tax time here, all the legal documents, receipts, and business papers you've accumulated over the last 12 months have become a priority. This is especially true when it comes to tax documents. The IRS has 3 years to go after you on your tax return and requires backup proof of everything you've claimed. If the IRS discovers substantial errors during an audit, they could ask for records up to 6 years back. They've got 6 years to go after you and say, hey, you underperformed this really badly. So the general rule is to keep all tax documents for 6 years to be on the safe side. However, you may want to keep your actual tax return longer than that so you have proof of filing. because the IRS has no limit on when they can say you failed to file your taxes. Proof of expenses related to home improvements are also worth keeping. If you own a home, you have the ability to sell that home and pocket tax-free up to $250,000 as an individual tax filer, or $500,000 as a married tax filing couple of the gain that you get in that home. However, if in rare instances where your gain is more than this, you can still reduce the amount of tax you pay by keeping track of your capital improvements. You'd want to create a file of these home improvements and receipts, and then hang on to them until you sell your home for at least 6 years.
Right. And if you had an inspection done on your home, and one of those things that says you must fix that or do this to the home, those are expenses that reduce the amount that you are taxed. You want to keep those documents for 6 years as well. And if you have a business or perhaps own rental property, you should keep anything, keep those documents as well on the property file. Anything that could affect your tax burden that is charitable giving, it is important that you keep these documents related to the donations. And donations for charity have changed drastically over the years, and a lot of times it's just not worth keeping them because the
'Cause you can't
threshold
deduct it.
the threshold's so high now. And if you're tech savvy and you want to keep your tax documents safe and sound in an electronic format in the iCloud, here are some free iCloud options to choose from: Google One, Microsoft OneDrive, Apple iCloud.
Just keep them somewhere,
Yep.
period.
For sure. All right. A steep drop in credit scores hits student loan borrowers. This seems to be a pretty prevalent situation here lately. About 43% of those who owe payments have resumed making them, and pandemic-era relief on federal student loans has ended. Americans with student loans are waking up to the reality that skipping payments comes with consequences. Relief on federal student loans ended in October of 2024, starting the 90-day clock for people to have to make payments before their credit scores take a hit. Now that time is up, and borrowers are feeling the pain. Shiloh Garcia was notified by her bank this month that her credit score had dropped from 720 to 620. She discovered she was more than 90 days delinquent on payments for her $16,000 in student loans, which she had thought were still suspended. Her mortgage broker estimated the lower score would add $400 to the monthly payment for the new home that she wanted to buy.
Ouch.
Yeah.
About 43% of borrowers who owe payments on federal student loans haven't resumed making them. And that puts more than 9 million people at risk of serious credit score drop, with 2 million of those on track to fall into subprime status.
So if you have kids in this scenario, you need to check on them and
Right.
make sure that they are back paying their student loans
That's
and let
right.
them know about this.
Well, the setback could have a ripple effect throughout the economy, putting home ownership or a new car further out of reach for late payers who are largely 25 to 50. That's the age. Lower scores can also mean lower credit card limits, higher rates, interest rates, which could be a drag on consumer spending, which is a critical engine in the U.S. economy. Borrowers cite a mix of reasons for not resuming payments, including confusion over the loan status and inadequate communications from loan servers, the companies that collect payments on behalf of the government. Some say bill reminders that were sent to outdated home or email addresses when the COVID-19 pandemic era started.
Okay. You owe debt. It is your responsibility to know where the debt is
I hear you.
and when your payments are starting and how to keep up with that. It's not their problem. It is your problem that's going to hurt you.
Absolutely.
Period. I don't understand how people just want to blame someone else and their credit gets ruined. It makes no sense to me.
Well, in their defense, there are people fresh out of college that haven't experienced the real world yet. And so, they get out and it's like, oh, wait a minute.
And they want to blame somebody. But,
Sure.
And I do think that they probably eventually come back to the realization that it's their fault.
Yeah. I just find it crazy.
They
So-
learned a valuable lesson.
So I guess where I find it so crazy is back when I went to school, you didn't take a loan out. You paid cash.
Or your mom and dad pay for it and you never knew
Right.
about it.
Right. But you didn't. I got my first credit card after I got out of college. Credit wasn't even available back then. And now credit's available and borrowing is so available that it's just too easy to get into this debt to me. I think we need to rein in this stuff.
Well, we talk about it all the time. Everyone walks around with this very powerful computer in their pocket. They're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all these social media sites. You're looking at God knows what all the time, but they're failing to stop long enough to take a look at the things that make their life easier or make them smarter about how to manage their life.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So the Education Department and loan servicers reached out to borrowers with emails and texts in 2023 before payments were required again, according to a Government Accountability Office report last July. People with higher credit scores could be hardest hit. Those with scores above 780 could see a 129-point drop on average if they had a serious delinquency, according to TransUnion. Those with scores of 600 or below might see a 16-point drop on average. Not all borrowers are at risk. Of the 45 million people with some federal student loan debt, more than 11 million are on time with payments. Millions more remain exempt from payments under programs for unemployed or low-income people, some of which are tied up in courts. Jack Matthews is among those who noticed this month that his credit score took a hit, falling from 784 to 620.
Yep. Matthews, who is 28, said his loan officer had been contacting an old email address and home address for his parents. It is possible he ignored calls from the company, Nelnet, if he didn't recognize the number, which I think a lot of us do.
Right?
He added that he didn't get any voicemails or text messages from the loan servicer. As a result of his lower score, his mortgage lender said he would now need a co-signer for the new home in Colorado that he had been planning to buy. In another case, a California nurse said she didn't resume making payments on her loan because she had applied for a program that lowers payments based on income. The program, which is called SAVE, all caps, SAVE, was created under the Biden administration and is being challenged in courts. Meanwhile, payments in the program were suspended. After seeing her credit score hit, she called Nelnet, the loan servicer, which eventually told her that it had no record of her SAVE application.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo Sherry's sentiments here. But here's a word for the wise. The responsibility for keeping contact information up to date with any lender or financial institution is with the borrower. This is why it is important to keep track of all your income, investments, accounts, bank statements, bills, loans, etc. The ramifications of not doing so were just highlighted in this article. While it may seem cruel, the lenders have no understanding of why a person is not paying their bills as they are required to pay. They simply open the terms of agreements and follow the steps as if the payments are not received. So don't be that person who gets whacked by a finance company. 99% of the people don't mean to let this happen. And when it does, it sets you back years and in some cases on your path to financial freedom. But do not let this be the end of the world. Regroup, adapt your plan, and learn from your mistakes and move forward.
Absolutely agree.
You've been listening to Your Money, produced by Lifespan Wealth Management with your hosts, Sherry Goss, Randy Goss, and me, Jonathan Eisner. If you'd like to contribute to the show, you can email Randy at rfmoney.com with a question or topic that you'd like us to cover in a future broadcast. Our number is 478-922-8100. We have offices in Macon and Warner Robins for your convenience.
And you can find out more about us by visiting our website, retirerelax.com. Lifespan Wealth Management has been serving the Middle Georgia area for over 30 years, helping people like you achieve their investment and retirement goals. And if you're in need of a financial advisor, please contact our office at 478-922-8100.
We also offer seminars to the community at no cost. So if you are in need of a guest speaker for your church or civic organization, give us a call and together we can decide what topics you would like us to present to your group.
Again, our contact number is 478-922-8100. Now back to the show.
Very good. So next up, job seekers hit wall of salary deflation. The salary bump that people who switch jobs used to command has vanished. It used to pay to switch jobs, and now it doesn't. The salary difference between those who stay in their roles and those who change jobs has collapsed to its lowest level in 10 years, according to the latest federal data. Job stayers increased their wages by about 4.6% in January and February. Meanwhile, those who switched jobs received only slightly more at 4.8%. That gap has narrowed considerably since the start of 2023, when job switchers could fetch an average salary bump of 7.7% compared with job stayers 5.5%. And we saw this in our daughter.
We did.
She jumped jobs every quarter for a year.
And she was making
made
bumps like that
more
all the time.
And more
Yep.
and more and more. And it was crazy to watch.
And now she's smart. She's sitting tight.
Yep.
Yeah, Keith Sims, an Indianapolis recruiter, firm places teams of 5 to 40 people in software implementation with big companies such as Panasonic. And now he's seeing that many officers are coming in low these days. He says that they're seeing offers of 10 to 40,000 less than normal. That's a huge shift.
Yep.
Even in the tech industry, where not so long ago workers bounced around for big raises with ease, now more people are hanging on to the jobs that they have. Workers who negotiated their salaries during the pandemic, even when the sector drove big pay raises, especially at high growth tech firms, aren't likely to find the new jobs for more money than they're already making.
Yep. According to research data, in the second half of 2024, median pay decreased between 1% and 2% for several roles, including software engineers, product designers, and technical program managers. Bumps in pay were reserved for certain high demand employees like hardware engineers and data scientists. Senior and mid level leaders in tech face the most pronounced pay drops of between like Randy just said, $10,000 and $40,000 a year. Even in AI, managers overseeing machine learning teams have seen compensation shrink by about $10,000 to $20,000 a year as companies focus on hiring practitioners over leaders. An example of this is Kim Vadrilla, 42, who's been working as a creative director for a major consumer brand up until this past fall when she was laid off. And she was making more than $200,000. During her job hunt, she's finding the same role listed for about $140,000 to $160,000. Josh Vogel's another example. He was working as a director of customer success for a company that makes golf simulators when he was laid off late last year. He spent 5 months job hunting and submitted his resume to 2,500 positions using AI to populate the application fields. Vogel found during interviews that companies seem to be looking for the so-called perfect candidate, somebody who checks every single box. He says that in the COVID era, he experienced a lot of career hypergrowth and that seems to be correcting itself. The wiggle room when it comes to salary negotiations, also gone. If the role is advertised as $100,000, that's what it pays. Vogel recently accepted a job as a customer success manager for a benefits technology firm. He's making $120,000 a year, which is about $50,000 less than his former role, and his overall compensation is even lower once he takes into account the annual bonus that he used to get. He says that no one is paying what they used to, and if you don't like it, there's 50 people behind you that are that they'll call as soon as you walk out the door. Things can change on a dime as higher paying roles become rarer and layoffs continue to ripple through the workforce. Fewer people are quitting. Research shows that the number of American workers who quit their jobs last year hit the lowest level since 2020. And some economists expect even fewer people to quit in 2025.
Only makes sense. So, 5 things you can do to help simplify your estate for your heirs. I talk with clients about these things a lot. Like every week, I have somebody in my office that I'm talking to about this stuff. So, we're just doing a summary here. One of the greatest gifts you can give your loved ones is a thoughtful estate strategy that outlines your wishes after you're gone. While no one enjoys thinking about this topic, taking action now can help protect your legacy and ensure that your final wishes are respected. Here are some key actions you can take today to help your loved ones. 1, create a central document hub. Keep all essential information in one accessible location. This includes account details, passwords, insurance policies, and contact information for key professionals. While digital vaults are helpful, consider maintaining a physical folder, and most importantly, let your family know where it is. So you can go to our website and you can download My Life Book and you can fill it out and put it in a binder and add all of your stuff to the binder, and they will have everything in one point. I mean, that's the whole point of this, is have everyone available to them.
And I think the most important thing is what you said at the end. Let people in your family know where to find it.
Yeah. Is it in the freezer?
Yeah, right.
So 2, review your beneficiaries. Do you know that your beneficiary designations typically override instructions in your will? Take time to review all your accounts, especially after major life changes like marriage, divorce, or the birth of a child. This simple step may help prevent unintended consequences and potentially family disputes. Consolidate entitled property is number 3. Multiple accounts at various institutions can create confusion and delays. Consider consolidating accounts where appropriate and review how all assets are titled. This includes investment accounts, real estate, vehicles, and other valuable possessions. I'm encouraging all of my clients to get everything consolidated because when my dad died, he had 7 bank accounts. And it wasn't terrible because they were bank accounts, but if they had been investment accounts, it would have made it very difficult for everybody to agree on what should go where and to who and all of that. Because when you inherit an investment account with individual holdings, that has to be divided and split up. And for us, it was 5 kids. So it could get really complicated. So just try to make it simple for everybody.
Yeah. The 4th thing is to consider transfer on death options. Transfer on death or TOD arrangements, they can help your assets pass directly to your beneficiaries, potentially avoiding time-consuming probate that I'm sure everybody has heard about that process. You want to avoid that if all possible. Number 5, express your wishes clearly. Help manage family disputes by being specific about your wishes, especially regarding personal items with sentimental value. Consider creating a detailed list of who should receive specific items and keep it with your estate documents.
So this is really funny. So I talked to a lot of my clients about this, and many of them tell me, you know what? My house is full of stuff. Nobody wants it, and I'm not going to get rid of it, and they're just going to have to deal with it when I die. They're just leaving the big piles of everything, and they're just going to have to sort it out.
And that's just terrible. We have met people who spend
A
they
year.
actually, a year. They actually have to take time off work
Sorting
to
through
go
everything.
sort through this stuff. Yeah.
Anyways, so
All right, so protecting your legacy. Remember, creating an estate strategy is not a one-time event. Life changes, the strategies should evolve with it. Consider reviewing your arrangements after significant life events, and Sherry named some of these, but marriage or divorce, birth of a child, purchase of a property, starting a business, changes in tax laws. If you'd like to discuss how better to organize your estate or have questions about any of these suggestions, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
All right.
And if your parent is in this situation where they're hanging on to 3 generations worth of china and crystal and furniture and everything, approach them and ask them, what do you want to have happen to these things when you pass? I mean, just literally approach them, because someone's got to deal with this or it's going to be a nightmare. I just really, I hate what I'm seeing. People not dealing with this. I'm seeing a lot of this.
Yep. All right. The U.S. Labor Bureau of Labor Statistics recently reported that a staggering 8.9 million Americans now work multiple jobs. That's the highest number since the agency began tracking this data back in 1994. You might assume this trend primarily affects workers without college degrees, but the data tells a different story. According to an analysis from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the percentage of people holding multiple jobs with a college degree has steadily increased to 50.2% in 2024, up from 45.1% in 2019. This phenomenon of overemployment is reshaping how Americans approach their careers and financial security.
So why are so many employees, particularly those with college educations, taking on these multiple jobs? The answer lies at the intersection of economic necessity and opportunity. The most obvious is financial pressure. Despite having full-time employment, many workers find a single paycheck insufficient to meet their financial needs. The latest Consumer Price Index report showed that prices for essentials like food, shelter, and energy rose 2.8% in February compared to the previous year. Financial squeeze becomes evident when you factor in stagnant wages that have not kept up with inflation, particularly on housing costs.
Another big reason is credential inflation. The job market has become increasingly competitive as more Americans obtain college degrees. The percentage of college graduates has nearly doubled from 21% in 1994 to 37% in 2022. This credential inflation means you're competing with more highly educated candidates for positions that may not offer the salary growth needed to keep pace with living expenses. Another big reason is that some employers are cutting back on hours, forcing workers to find additional income sources. The average work week for all employees on private, non-farm payrolls was 34 hours in February. It just makes sense. If you're not making enough at one job because the hours are being reduced, then you might need that second or third job. And it makes me wonder why they're reducing the hours. I'd like to know what's behind that.
I think a lot of, think about some of the legislation that was put in where they say employers must they must increase the minimum wage. And we saw a lot of the employers cutting back on the number of hours because of that. So this could be part of it. Well, the gig economy has significantly lowered the barriers to working multiple jobs too. Platforms like Uber, Fiverr, Airbnb have made side hustles widely accessible. Also, with the rise of remote work, commutes are no longer an issue, making it easier to juggle multiple jobs. This trend includes 2 main groups: those taking on extra work for financial needs and side hustlers aiming to speed up their financial goals to explore entrepreneurial interest. For both groups, digital platforms have revolutionized the ability to manage multiple income streams without the need for traditional employment arrangements. There are some strategies for managing multiple jobs that you might want to be aware of. If you find yourself among the millions of Americans working multiple jobs, consider these approaches to maximize benefits while minimizing drawbacks. First, be realistic about the financial gains. It's interesting that the Federal Reserve data shows multiple job holders can earn about $1,000 more annually than single job workers. That's 57,800 rough dollars versus $56,900. So carefully calculate whether the added stress and time commitment justifies the modest financial benefit. If necessary, explore higher paying options that maximize your return on the time invested.
Next, leverage complementary skills. Look for secondary employment that builds on your existing expertise or develops new skills relevant to your career goals. This approach can transform your second job from merely a source of income into a strategic career development opportunity. Then set clear boundaries. Establish firm time boundaries between your jobs to prevent burnout and maintain performance quality.
Yep, and prioritize high-value work. Not all side hustles offer equal returns on your time investment. Analyze your hourly earnings across different activities and focus on those that provide the best compensation for the effort. Consider whether upskilling might allow you to command higher rates for your additional work. And next, explore passive income opportunities. While most multiple job situations involve active work, you can supplement with more passive income streams like dividend investments or rental property or digital product sales that generate revenue with less ongoing time commitment.
So I've got a comment about a couple of clients of mine that dog sit, pet sit. They make a lot of money, cash money. They love what they do. They go to people's homes, and some of the homes they go to, they literally have to stay overnight in the house because the dog or the cat has to have injected medication and has to be fed specifically certain foods. And they have all these different dogs and cats that they walk or they sit or they check on or they feed or whatever. And it's a really feel-good thing. And because pet ownership is off the charts, it would be a really great side hustle for somebody to pick up to take care of pets. In fact, we have somebody that takes care of our pets when we're out of town.
That's right.
And she's wonderful. She loves them. She knows them by name. She does everything right. We have total peace of mind. We can go away and know that she's taken care of. So if you're needing a side hustle, that'd be the one that I would pick because people that have pets are usually pretty kind and nice people to hang around with.
That's right.
So what is the future of multiple jobs? The trend of Americans working multiple jobs shows no sign of slowing down. When you consider taking on additional work, weigh both the financial benefits and the personal costs. While multiple jobs may provide necessary income or valuable experience, the modest average financial gain suggests you should approach this decision strategically, that is, with clear goals and boundaries. The question remains whether this trend represents a temporary phenomenon or a fundamental restructuring of how we'll approach employment in the decades to come. For now, and for you, if you find yourself in multiple job position, be careful not to burn yourself out.
I want to say something.
Yeah.
This doesn't have anything to do with multiple jobs, but my teenager, who's almost 16, I think I've told you guys, he's umpiring for a local little league,
which is great.
It's great. It keeps him active. The money they pay these kids is really good. So for a game, which is anywhere between an hour and 15 minutes and an hour and 45 minutes, depending on the age group of the kids playing, is $30.
Well, they got to put up with the parents.
He can pay for his gas.
They build a thick skin. There's a lot of benefits to it. Correct, Sherry. I'm making my son pay for his own gas when he turns 16 in less than a month, so he has to work. But the Little League pays these kids $30 a game, and there are some games in the younger divisions that he gets on his own with not another umpire, and he gets 40 to 60 for those games.
Wow.
So the money's crazy, and it's pretty easy work.
And it's cash.
And these kids learn how to put up with real life. Like one of you guys just said, they got to put up with the parents. So you got to learn how to build a thick skin, which is real life stuff. And then my other son, who's about to be 13, he's looking into refereeing for the local soccer league, which also pays $30 per game. We just found out. So kids can make really good money for teenage, 13 to 16, $30 per, I don't know, call it 90 minutes of work.
That's incredible.
Pretty strong. So it doesn't have anything to do with multiple jobs, but I just wanted to throw that out there because we're experiencing that right now.
No, but I think it's great that if kids can learn to get into some kind of a job. When I was growing up, we were always out doing a hustle, cutting people's yards. And I don't think kids do that anymore, but, washing their cars, doing something to earn money. I think it's important that kids get out and learn to work.
Agreed.
And it just teaches them so many so many things. We had a young man a couple of weekends back that we needed some holes dug for some fairly
Oh my
large
gosh, it's
trees
amazing.
that we were going to put in our yard. So they were, it didn't sound terrible, but they were 15-gallon trees. Okay, so you need to dig a 30-gallon hole. And so it's a fairly substantial hole. And so we had 8 trees. And so we hired him, and his dad came out with him because his dad was working with me in the wood shop. And so the kid got out there. He's 14 years old, and he dug these trees. I told him,
It was
"Don't."
unbelievable.
Yeah, I said, do not go at this full pace. You're going to wear yourself out. Just be methodical about it. And so he did. And I mean, he struggled with the post hole diggers because they think they weighed about as much as he did, but he worked methodical all day long. And at the end of the day, he goes, "Mr. Randy, do I get paid today?" And I said, "Yes, but let's talk business here. Here's how you should conduct yourself." And we talked through it, and he learned. And his dad at the end of it, he goes, "Thank you for doing that because, he won't listen to me if I were to tell him." So they do learn practical, real world advice when they're out there doing stuff
sure.
like that.
And
So
he
it's
actually negotiated how much he wanted.
yes, he did.
He didn't just accept what you offered. He offered to you what he expected.
No,
to be paid.
I told him what I was going to pay.
Okay.
And then I made him, because I added 2 more holes to the job.
Ah,
I said, "You need to go tell me how much I owe
Ah,
you." And so
there
he
you
went
go.
there and calculated it. He was right.
wow.
So,
Well, to me, by default, you guys know this, by default, the more my kids are not buried in an iPad, the better.
Yep.
And so if they're actually out being productive and making money for themselves
Huge.
and not in an iPad at the same time,
right.
it's a win.
So a total win.
yeah. So if you're listening to this and you have kids or grandkids that are between 13 and 18, the local, Little League facility or soccer, they pay really good money if those kids need some earnings.
is there a class or something they have to go through to?
They do have to do some courses, but a lot of it's online, and
Mhm.
they do it, and as long as they pass the course and submit the certificate, they're good to go.
Nice.
And then there's some like hands-on training with the umpires that have been doing it for a while and things like that. But it's pretty easy to get to
Nice.
that point.
Very nice.
You just have to not be lazy, and you have to be, when you say I'm available, you have to actually show up.
Yeah.
So they're teaching responsibility too. It's great.
I think our first jobs, Randy and mine, were both dishwashers at 15. weren't they?
Dishwashers, meat cutters, Christmas tree trimmer, worked in a cotton factory. I mean, I did anything I could to make money.
Right. Because our parents didn't pay for stuff.
Yep.
So if we wanted something, we had to work. What a concept.
What a concept.
different time.
Right? So 5 actions to take when creating a financial action plan. Let's face it, everybody is different, so it stands to reason that your financial goals are going to be different. Most people don't want the exact same thing as the next person, but when they do want the same thing, they often take a different path to achieve the goal. Regardless of your goal, you need to have a plan. You may have heard the saying, "A goal without a plan is just a wish," which was credited to Antoine, whatever his name is, in the book. I don't even know how to pronounce that.
Saint-Exupéry. In
Thank
his book,
you.
The Petite Prince.
There you go.
I've always liked that saying, though, and you're right. There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all financial plan. You just need a roadmap.
I'm just thinking as you're saying this, you say maybe the next person has the same goal as this person. And it seems I've done a lot of financial plans for people over the years. And it used to be the number used to be 5,000. Okay, how can we retire and live on 5,000 a month? And now it's more like 7, probably, maybe 8, just because times have changed a little bit. But it's always the same goal.
Yeah.
It's how can I retire and live on $7,000 a month? But to your point, Sherry, this person might have this much in their accounts and they might be doing this to accomplish it. And then the next person might have nothing and they need to start from scratch. So the path to get there is always unique.
They have big dreams, but they also have giant bills right now.
Oh.
And they've got to get through all the bills first. So it makes they got to get that plan started and see their path so they can get there.
And there have been a number of those meetings that I've had over the years where you
Yes.
have to just kind of set people straight and be like, hey, you're
not
not going
there
to
yet.
accomplish this.
Right.
So you either need to dial this back some or get to work in a serious way.
That's right.
So I had a client this week, and she was not in good financial shape. And her son passed away and left his money to her. So now she's got $1 million on top of what she did have, and she's set for life. And we had a review this week, and she's so thankful for that money because she would not be in the situation that she's in today if she had not inherited money.
Wow.
So
I would say that's a pretty rare for money to be passed up to a parent.
yes,
That's probably pretty rare.
I've never seen anything like it.
Right. So there are dozens of goal setting methodologies in the management field dedicated to helping people achieve their goals. Financial arena is not any different. And we just add some financial lingo. But we're going to discuss 5 steps for building your own unique financial action plan. First thing you need to do, create a benchmark. This is just simply documenting your starting point. You want to create a snapshot of your financial position that you can reference as you move forward. For a financial plan, you should capture your income, how much you have in investments, cash, emergency savings, and long and short-term debt.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Uh, okay, creating a benchmark may seem like common sense, but it's a step that's often overlooked in the planning process. When I was in the military, benchmarking was everything. You need to know where you started so you can measure how far you've traveled and be able to accurately measure your accomplishments. Starting with taking a detailed inventory of your net worth, including the safe money, the money that's in your checking and your savings account, investments such as your IRA or your employee-sponsored 401k or your 403b, and your other valuables like real estate, art, valuables, collectibles, and your autos. And remember to include liabilities like mortgages or any outstanding debt that you might have.
So, Randy and I have been doing this for almost 40 years, and it is amazing to look back at where we started and see the baby steps turn into strides in achieving long range goals. I encourage you to download the Life Book from our Retire Relax website. It is absolutely free, and it would be a great place for you to document this financial journey. And I encourage you to pull this document out once or twice a year to refresh your memory on your goals, update them as needed, and keep updating your progress. Once you have all this information, record it, organize it, and store it somewhere safe. You'll need to be able to reference it often as you track your progress. Once you've created the benchmark, you need to create your goals. Despite what you may think, this document is less about creating large dollar goals. It is about identifying what you want to accomplish in life, how you want to live your life, the legacy you want to leave behind. Yes, often money will help you achieve these goals, and that's fine, but don't get so caught up in chasing every dollar and ultimately losing sight of what truly would make you happy. Your goals also need to be realistic. You need to realize that your plans to achieve these goals need to take the factors that help make these dreams a reality into consideration.
Right. And once you have identified your goals, you need an actionable plan. As you can imagine, some goals are more complex than others, and each will probably have different timelines, and it's very possible that some goals have several sub-goals. These timelines will determine how long it takes to achieve your goals and what resources it will take to achieve them. The resources I'm referring to are time, preparation, training, and yes, money. You need to be careful to review what needs to be done to reach your goals based on your established timelines. Some of the questions you might need to ask and answer are, what are the estimated costs of my goals? Where's this money going to come from? Where do I need additional income? What investments make the most sense for me? How risky or conservative can I afford to be with my investments? And how will taxes affect my income both now and in the future?
And of course, your plan should include the unexpected. Things like estate planning and insurance are important aspects of being financially prepared. What would happen to your things or your family if something happened to you? And I find people have a very hard time dealing with that question. Estate planning documents that may not have been a part of your financial inventory that should be a part of your financial plan going forward include a will, life insurance policies, trusts, and advance directives. And I encourage all of my clients to also have a power of attorney, which is someone that can step in and take over your finances if you are unable to manage them. And I will tell you one last thing. And I talked to clients about this just this week. They do not have, they're in their 80s and they have no burial plans, none. And so their children are going to have to wait until they pass and try to figure out how to do all of this.
And we're down to 1 minute. So, Jonathan, why don't you finish this article up here?
Yep. And I'll say this first. You can email me or Randy or Sherry at either of our names at rfmoney.com to get the rest of this report. But the 4th step is to remain focused on the goals that you set forth. And then the 5th step, and this is one of the most important ones that people don't think about, is to monitor the progress of the goals that you set forth. And one of the things that was written in this article, and again, email if you want some more details on this, was asset allocation. Okay, this is an overlooked the importance of this is overlooked. You can't be 48 years old, and generally speaking, you can't be 48 years old and be in an income fund, right? you got to match your timeline with the appropriate type of risk tolerance. We met a client this week, early 50s, has been conservative for 6 years, 7 years. And so anyway, that's what we're here for, is to help say, okay, look, you're only this age, you got this much time, be a little bit more risky, et cetera. So email us for the full report and be happy to go into detail with you.
Excellent.
Thanks for listening to Your Money, produced by Lifespan Wealth Management. As financial advisors, the main thing we do is provide retirement planning advice and manage our clients' investment accounts. If you're looking for an investment advisor, call our office at 478-922-8100 to set up your complimentary consultation. You can learn more about our services by visiting our website at retirerelax.com.
And if you'd like to contribute to the show, you can email me, randy@rfmoney.com, with a question or a topic that you would like for us to cover in a future broadcast. And we look forward to connecting with you next week. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth.